A young artillery officer, brimming with raw talent and ambition but little formal recognition, stands at the gates of a coastal city, a labyrinth of fortifications, ships, and enemy lines. Welcome to Napoleon Bonaparte's first foray into the spotlight, a drama filled with sabotage, audacity, and a star that will soon overshadow even the most decorated generals of his time. Stick around if you want to discover how a 24-year-old took command, masterminded a siege, and shot up the ranks to become the man who would, for better or worse, shape Europe like no other. In the tumultuous backdrop of revolutionary France, the Siege of Toulon stands as a remarkable episode replete with military audacity, political betrayal, and strategic brilliance. As the revolution raged on in 1793, the city of Toulon, a pivotal naval base on the Mediterranean coast, found itself ensnared in a complex web of loyalties. Dissatisfied with the radical turn the revolution had taken and alarmed by the rise of the Reign of Terror, Toulon's predominantly royalist leadership invited British and Spanish fleets to occupy the port. This defiant act was both a revolt against the revolutionary government in Paris and a significant military coup for the anti-French coalition. For revolutionary France, retaking Toulon became an imperative not just for strategic reasons, but as a way to demonstrate the Republic's resilience and resolve. The stage was set for a fierce struggle that would involve ingenuity, gambles, and a young Corsican officer named Napoleon Bonaparte, whose actions during the siege would irrevocably set him on the path to historical immortality. In the late 18th century, naval power was the linchpin of global influence, and Toulon was France's principal Mediterranean naval base. It was more than just a port, it was the guardian of France's southern coastline, a gateway to the Mediterranean, and a launchpad for naval operations extending as far as Africa, the Middle East, and beyond. Holding Toulon meant securing a vital artery of maritime commerce, and potentially controlling the balance of naval power in the Mediterranean. Its dry docks, arsenals, and fortifications made it a fortress that was almost impregnable from the sea, a jewel that France could ill afford to lose. The rebellion of Toulon and its occupation by British and Spanish forces represented a crisis of monumental proportions for the French Republic. Losing control of this vital naval base didn't just pose a military threat, it threatened the very fabric of the revolutionary ideology. If Toulon could rebel and invite foreign powers to set foot on French soil, it sent a dangerous message to other discontented regions that similar acts of defiance might succeed. Furthermore, it provided France's enemies a foothold from which they could launch devastating land and sea attacks deep into French territory. In essence, the loss of Toulon could potentially unspool the threads holding the young French Republic together, making its recapture an urgent priority steeped in both strategic necessity and symbolic resonance. In this high-stakes arena, the Siege of Toulon would not only be a battle for control of a city but a struggle for the soul and survival of the revolutionary ideals that France had so dramatically embraced. In this swirling cauldron of military urgency and political tension, a figure emerged from relative obscurity to take on a role that would be a stepping stone to legend: Napoleon Bonaparte. At this point, he was still Captain Napoleon, a 24-year-old Corsican with more ambition than battlefield experience. But what he lacked in years, he more than made up for with audacious intelligence and an almost preternatural understanding of artillery, the king of the battlefield, as it was known. Before his appointment to the Siege of Toulon, Napoleon Bonaparte had made his mark in the retaking of Marseille. The young Corsican, armed with more than just a grasp of artillery but a knack for the theatrics of war, had shown his mettle. But it was in September of that fateful year of 1793, amidst the swirling chaos of revolution and war, that destiny extended an inviting hand to him. General Cardos, in charge of the army preparing to lay siege to Toulon, recognized the need for someone with a deep understanding of artillery warfare to steer this critical aspect of the battle. It was no small task. The artillery would be the linchpin in reclaiming Toulon, and there was little room for error. Napoleon, not yet the emperor but showing glimpses of the man he would become, was appointed as the commander of artillery in Cardos's army. It was an appointment that came not just with considerable risk but also colossal expectations. It was here, in the shadow of Toulon's fortifications, that Napoleon would find his first true test, an opportunity to rise from the rank of an obscure artillery captain to a figure of military legend. The young Corsican was about to enter a crucible that would either forge him into something greater or shatter him entirely. The Siege of Toulon. Let's not mince words, this was far from a run-of-the-mill military engagement. This was a crucible where tactics, politics, and sheer human will clashed in a fiery spectacle. Picture the setting, the formidable fortifications of Toulon bristling with British and Spanish cannons, guarded by royalists who had more faith in foreign powers than their own countrymen. Across from them, the beleaguered yet unyielding forces of revolutionary France, armed not just with muskets and cannons but an unquenchable thirst for victory. In the middle of it all, Captain Napoleon Bonaparte, now the commander of artillery, was practically the heartbeat of the entire siege operation. Napoleon immediately grasped the enormity and complexity of the task at hand. Toulon was a fortress, shielded by its walls and fortifications, but also by the formidable British and Spanish navies. A head-on assault would be catastrophic. Napoleon knew that reclaiming Toulon would require something far more cerebral. He proposed to capture the forts that surrounded Toulon, specifically targeting Fort L'Aiguillette and La Tour-Balaguer, which would give his artillery a commanding position to dominate the city's harbor. Doing so would cut off the British and Spanish fleet's ability to support the royalist forces, essentially isolating the city and making it ripe for recapture. It was audacious, perhaps even considered foolhardy by some, but Napoleon was nothing if not audacious. The young Corsican meticulously organized his artillery, calculated trajectories, and ensured that every cannon was perfectly positioned. These were not just pieces of heavy metal. In his hands, they were instruments in an orchestra, ready to play a symphony of destruction that would break the will of the enemy. And so, the cannons roared. Under Napoleon's guidance, the artillery rained hellfire upon the fortifications, reducing what was once thought to be impregnable walls to mere rubble. It was a relentless bombardment, a symphony whose crescendo shattered the spirit of the royalist and foreign defenders alike. With the outer fortifications compromised and their naval support nullified, the enemy found themselves cornered, leading to their ultimate surrender. Toulon was back in French hands, and the revolution lived to fight another day. But Napoleon's contributions weren't limited to strategic planning. He also found himself in the thick of battle. During one of the critical moments in the siege, when French lines were wavering, Napoleon was noted for his bravery, rallying troops and leading from the front, even getting bayoneted in the thigh during one skirmish. But this was not just a victory for revolutionary France, it was a coming-out party for Napoleon. His understanding of artillery, his audacious tactics, and his indomitable will had turned the tide in what seemed like an impossible battle. As Toulon fell back into Republican hands, the significance of Napoleon's role became abundantly clear. His strategies and leadership during the siege not only expedited the capture of the city but also minimized French casualties. The Siege of Toulon, thus, became Napoleon's first major military achievement, heralding the arrival of a military genius who would, in the years to come, reshape the landscape of Europe. His performance did not go unnoticed. Promoted to the rank of brigadier general, he was no longer just a captain from Corsica. He was a hero of the revolution, a man whose name would be etched not just in the annals of the siege but in the very soul of a nation fighting for its identity. So, if you've ever wondered how legends are made, look no further than the Siege of Toulon, a battle that not only decided the fate of a city but marked the ascendancy of one of history's most enigmatic and fascinating figures. Napoleon Bonaparte had arrived, and this was just the overture. The symphony of his life, filled with triumphs, tragedies, and endless debates, had only just begun. If you've enjoyed this dive into the annals of history, teeming with plots, battles, and larger-than-life characters, don't forget to hit that like button. Do you have thoughts, insights, or burning questions about Napoleon or the Siege of Toulon? Drop them in the comments below. And, of course, if you want to stay tuned for more electrifying tales from the past, make sure to smash that subscribe button. Until next time, keep the wheels of time turning.